Yo, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart for those of you that are new. And today we have another 8 game breakdown, 8 game NBA slate breakdown here on DraftKings for Wednesday nights. I'll be talking through some of the people I like, some who I don't like, kind of why, kind of breaking down each game, who I'd like to target, some value, as well as an early look kind of player pool of guys I'm looking to target. As always, the injury news does change the entire slate. So let's jump right into it. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And it is still pretty early. I think we're only about halfway through tonight's slate. I don't know if the game has finished yet. So, as I said, going to be recording these pretty early in the night. So we'll obviously miss some news, which will come out after the games. If guys getting injured, stuff like that. But right now, we have 8 games slate. The Magic are playing tonight. They're up about like 15 on the Hornets, but 7 point spread, 226.5 game total there. Do like that, especially for it to stay close, a back to back for the Magic. And unless the game really blows out tonight, if the guys play close to the normal minutes, it should keep their legs tired enough, hopefully, if you do target this game, to keep it close. Clippers Rockets, 6 point spread, 224.5 total. Grizzlies 76ers, 210.5 total, 5 point spread. Cavs Hawks, 222, 1.5 point spread. Both those teams are playing tonight. Bulls Jazz, 2.5 point spread, 225.5 game total. Thunder Blazers, 11.5 point spread, 224.5 game total. Bucks Warriors, 3 points, 228.5 total. And then Kings Lakers late night hammer, 2.5 point spread and 238.5 game total. So very, very juicy there. Moving on into this first game here, as I said, with Orlando, they're just a really, really solid team. Paolo Banchero, not really sure how he's doing tonight, but he looks really, really good here. As I said, there's a few teams, like 5 teams, obviously the worst teams in the NBA, the Wizards, the Spurs, the I'm blanking. The Wizards, the Spurs, the Pistons, the Charlotte Hornets, those teams, you want to target them just because they're god awful. They give up a ton of points. They can't play defense. They're not playing for anything. So you'd like to target them. Great matchup here for Paulo. It's kind of the same breakdown I had for today for tonight's slate this morning, where really, really like Paulo here in this matchup. Going to throw him in my early look player pool. I think Franz is a really, really strong option. I think Wendell Carter's actually having a pretty solid game today, as I kind of mentioned. Like, if he gets close to 30 minutes, he can definitely put up a pretty solid game there. So price hasn't changed. Great matchup. Good amount of interest in him there. And in terms of the guards, sure, if you land on these guys, they're fine. But I'd really just stick with Paulo or Franz and then possibly taking a shot on Wendell. Otherwise, I know Isaac. I think he's close to 20 fantasy points, if not more. He's always a viable dart throw play if you need a very, very cheap option. But otherwise, not a ton to like here for Orlando for me. On the Washington side, as I say, like if the game stays close, it's going to be because of Kyle Kuzma having a really, really strong game here. And it should be more playmaking and more shot attempts for him there now that Poole is on the bench, which really just helps out the offense overall. That should lead to a little bit more shot attempts for Denny. As you can see, he shot it 18 times that last game, 35 minutes. So he looks like, yeah, I don't love the price of 6.7, but if he's going to play 35 minutes, shoot it, 10 plus times, I think it's a fine option, especially when he's good at, getting the peripheral stats. I think he's more so a secondary option. Tyus Jones, I actually do really like him. He was really, really good for me last night. 30 minutes, 8 of 11, 21, 6, and 5, 40 fantasy points. I mean, he is really, really strong upside and good upside, as you can see. Double-double ability when the game stays close and he sees 30 plus minutes. So I do have some interest in him. In terms of the rest of the team here, we'll see who they start in place of Marvin Bagley, who I believe will not play for this game here. So with that in mind, they could start Holmes here, 3.8K. If he gets to start, I'd assume 15 to 20 minutes. He'd be a pretty, I'd say, okay value. But yeah, they don't really have any other bigs, as you can see. Possibly could they bring someone up? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see tomorrow. But right now, they're pretty short-handed on the center position. So for Holmes, looks like a good candidate to be a very chalky but very worthwhile value for the slate tomorrow. Moving on to Cleveland here versus Atlanta. As I mentioned, both these teams are playing tonight. So for Cleveland, Mitchell did not play tonight. He'll be out for a little bit, a few more. I think it was like 2 weeks, something like that. Strus, he was out for tonight's game, right knee strain. He's possibly back tomorrow. Obviously, that changes the starting lineup because right now Coral and Merrill started for kind of those two guys, Mitchell and Strus, along with Mobley, Garland, and Allen. So definitely keep an eye on the Strus news because it does change the starting lineup. But in terms of the Cleveland guys, obviously fantastic game environment here for Cleveland going against Atlanta. So Mobley, Garland, and Allen all look like very, very strong first option plays. In terms of the secondary guys, if Merrill starts again, I still like him, even though the price went up and he's not playing well tonight. We know the ability with him if he catches fire from three. But even if he does move to the bench, let's say Strus is back, I still like, taking a shot on Merrill in GPPs. I think Levert's a very strong play, with no Mitchell. He should be the main kind of focus and playmaker, score off the bench there for the Cavs. So even at 6,000, a little bit pricey, but still very, very worth it. So we like the three main guys, Levert, and then I don't mind landing on Merrill and Okoro, as I mentioned, if there is no Strus. Now, if there's Strus, I'd really only take a shot on Strus or Merrill and GPPs if you want to get to them. On the Atlanta side here, as I said, DeJounte Murray is a great spend up. Jalen Johnson, he's going off tonight right now. We'll see what he finishes with, but I mean, he has that ability. So I don't love the price tag personally, even though I really like him as a player. It just feels a little bit too expensive for a guy who's kind of up and down offensively, but still able to absolutely explode on the slate. Bogey here, having another rough night tonight. So it's just hard. You'd want him to be more of a playmaker, more of a scorer, and he's just been struggling a little bit. So I think he's still a viable option just because the minutes, the upside there when he does hit his shots, but right now just more of a secondary option. Capella, fine play there if you land on him. The minutes have not been great. And as I said, Sadiq Bey, Hunter, they're both viable options off the bench. Sadiq Bey should start to see 30 plus minutes, 5.5K, decent price tag for him. And then Hunter, a guy that can't get hot off the bench there. Been seeing solid minutes, but as you can see, if he's hitting the shots, he can go for 35 plus. So they are there in GPPs. Memphis versus Philly here. On the Memphis side, the big news right now is Jaren Jackson Jr. If he's good to go, I actually like, targeting him. He's a guy who's going to shoot 20 plus times if the game stays close and see 35 plus minutes. We know the ability is there when it comes to blocks and steals and having a massive game. So would really, really like him if he's good to go. Now, if he misses, obviously we're going to load up on, some of these other guys like Vince Williams, Asante Aldama. We can definitely get down to a guy like GG Jackson. They're at power forward, 5.1K, possibly starting or even coming off the bench, being aggressive. So that's big news there is Triple J. But if he's good to go, I'd really just stick with him and ensure, you could get to Luke Kennard, who had a huge game that last game, but still the minutes have not been great, even with a lot of guys being injured. Only played 27 minutes in a close game. Even though he went off, you'd like to just see more minutes there. Didn't really shoot the ball a ton either. So it's like, I have interest, but, his usage hasn't been too crazy there. I'd really just stick with Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, if he's out, obviously, I'll have a little bit of a breakdown on Twitter for you guys there. For Philly here, Embiid's obviously out. Maxey has a concussion, so he'll be out, I would assume, for at least another game or two. So that means tonight they did start Lowry and Campaign, along with Tobias Harris, Buddy Hield, and then Paul Reed. So that is the starting lineup there for the 76ers. So, it's probably going to be the same thing if that happens. The main guys offensively in the starting lineup will be Harris and Hield. Now, tonight, so far through the first half, it was pretty much kind of split even. Tobias was probably the best offensive player. Hield was really struggling, wasn't doing too much playmaking, which I would have hoped for him to be, to get the ball more in his hands, have the more upside with the assist, but looks like the first half it really wasn't there for him. But obviously they're kind of, filling out this lineup here. But the Campaign, if he's going to start again, 4.1K is just way too cheap there at the price tag. Even Kyle Lowry at 5.9 doesn't feel great, but he should see 30 plus minutes. There's times where he's not aggressive, but still 30 plus from him. They're going to need him to play. That's a pretty safe price tag to get him at. But I think my favorite plays besides obviously Campaign would be chalk. Would be Buddy Hield. I'd like taking a shot on him depending on how he does tonight. If he does really well in the second half, I'm sure he'll be chalky tomorrow. But if he does bad, I do think he'll keep his ownership low. But I expect him and Tobias to really lead the team here offensively. And off the bench, Kelly Oubre actually had a really good first half. So he's one of my core plays. And I switched last second to Buddy Hield, which is very, very frustrating. But yeah, he'll come off the bench. He'll probably play mid-20s minutes, possibly even 30-plus minutes, especially if there's some foul trouble in the starting unit. But yeah, Tobias, Buddy, Kyle Oubre are going to be kind of the main offensive players that you do want to target. And then in terms of just guys who are going to play a ton of minutes and should be able to get, to their salary, if not more, it's going to be, Kyle Lowry and Campaign. Moving on to the Clippers here versus Houston. Clippers side, they're coming off a very, very disappointing game there against Milwaukee. No Giannis, and they pretty much got beat strictly just by Dame and Bobby Portis. I mean, they pretty much outscored them by those two themselves. So with that in mind, I expect them to come out really, really strong here in this game against Houston, which makes All three of these guys, viable options. They're more so contrarian plays. I don't mind taking a shot on Harden. He's actually been pretty solid in terms of his upside recently, but still, they all kind of feel priced about right. Nothing too crazy there. Zubac is always a strong and interesting option in GPPs. The minutes are always going to be up and down, but if you do catch him at that right, game where he does play close to 30 minutes and he goes for a double-double, you should be in for a really solid night. Off the bench, Powell will be the offensive power there, but still, he's really just going to be in the scoring kind of facet, so there's really no need to get to him. Moving on to Houston here. Once again, a very cheap price tag here for Sengun. I'm not really sure how he's playing tonight, but it's just too cheap for him at 8,000, even in a tough matchup. Same thing with Fred, 7,500, but still, he's going to be playing close to 40 minutes. So really like both of them. In terms of other guys here, not much for me. As I always mention, Cam Whitmore is one of those GPP dart throw plays who minutes are not great, but as you can see, definitely can go off in a short amount of time. And obviously, if it blows out, he could get a little bit of a blowout run. Moving on to Chicago here. Finally got rewarded for playing low-owned Kobe White. That was fantastic last night, as I tweeted. Even though I did not cash, I'm just happy that I finally got rewarded for playing Kobe White. But once again, with the Bulls, fantastic game environment here. Really like Kobe. Really like Vooch. I think DeMar is a very strong option. I'd really just rather get to Vooch and Kobe. They just feel safer. Probably have more of upside than DeMar at this point, but still, all three are very strong and viable. Isles' price is slowly moving up, but still, it is way too cheap here. He's playing close to 40 minutes. He's been shooting the ball a ton. He's been super efficient. So once again, it does have a little bit of a low floor. At times he's not going to be the best playmaking, but still, 6,000 for a guy who's playing 40 minutes. That's way too cheap, especially in this matchup. Moving on to a GPP dart throw, Drummond could be your guy. If there's some foul trouble, they definitely look to him. Crusoe's back. He should be playing close to, I'd say 32-ish minutes. He's a fine option there in tournament settings, and that's really it. Moving on to Utah here. Lowry's still out. Hendricks is out. Kessler's out. Kante George is questionable. So we'll probably get a starting lineup of Collins, Sexton, Collins, Sexton, George, if he does play. He did play that last game, but only played 6 minutes, and then he left. So we'll have to see with that injury or that illness there. But we could possibly get, Samanage starting again. He played bad, 23 minutes still. We can get Horton Tucker, and we can get Chris Dunn. So there's a lot of value that could potentially be there for this game tomorrow. With depending on Kante George, even with him, if he is back, there's still going to be some value we could want to get to. So kind of more of a wait and see approach. I mean, obviously Collins and Sexton are going to be kind of the cream of the crop you do want to get to. We know Clarkson's always a strong GPP option. He's going to shoot the ball a ton. It's just one of those things, if he comes off and he's not shooting the ball well, he does have a very low floor, especially if he's going to be 6.8K and super chalky tomorrow. So that's the only downside with him. If Kante George is back, if he's good to go, which we obviously don't know with that illness, it could still be affecting him as it did yesterday. He's definitely risky, but as you can see, if he does play his full minutes, he should be very aggressive. So even though at 6.7 does feel like a lot, he'd definitely be viable. And then obviously, it's kind of more of a wait and see approach, but actually, really like Dunn, Horton Tucker, and Samanage as value. But that's going to be kind of a wait and see approach for tomorrow. Moving on to OKC here versus Portland. Obviously, a lot of blowout risk here in this matchup, but SGA, Chat, Jalen Williams, all very strong options. If you land on them, I would not go my way to build around them, but if it's one of those things you're building the lineup, you land on them. I don't mind it, but obviously there is that blowout risk there. Moving on to Portland here, if they can keep it close, should be because of Simons here, who's actually been solid fantasy point wise the past 2 games. But you never know, especially if the game blows out. He's always just a wild card. Grant is questionable. If he's out, we'll get that beat starting lineup once again, which was Simons, Reith, Walker, Murray, and Banton, which, Banton will probably be the best option out of all those guys if that's the starting lineup once again. I still think Chris Murray's a fine option. Played 35 minutes, shot 6 of 11, 27 fantasy points. I mean, 5K does seem like a little bit too much, but still, seeing 36 minutes, he can definitely, if he hits a few shots, easily pay out 5,000. Reeve actually had a really strong game there, 39 minutes. If he stays out, foul trouble, he's fine, but it's obviously dependent on Ayton and Grant news there for if we're going to get to those guys or not. Milwaukee versus Golden State should be a great game to watch. Giannis, obviously, if you feel good with the value, you can definitely get up to him, or which right now, not guaranteed value besides kind of Utah. Other than that, you could definitely fade him, but I do think he'll be popular, especially that Utah value. People will want to jam in Giannis, and with him most likely back. Kind of takes Dame out of play for me at 9.2. I think it makes him a fine play. And then in terms of these other guys here, I don't have much interest in Portis and Beasley or Lopez with Giannis back. I mean, he just takes up so much usage. If you're looking for some cheap guys, you could take a shot in like a Crowder or Beverly or Connaughton, but I really don't think there's a need. It's really just sticking with the main two if you want to get to them. Otherwise, I don't think there's a necessity to get to anyone else. Golden State here, with them, it's just a headache in terms of this, starting lineup. Like Draymond has been starting at the 5. They've been doing well, but I don't know. I mean, you kind of had to throw the Boston game out of the window. Obviously, they got blown out by like 300 points, but when it comes to Golden State, I personally think the only safe option you have is Steph and Draymond. I really think that's it. In terms of other guys, it's like Kuminga. He's been very up and down in terms of his production. Actually, he had those 3 good games in a row, but before that, it was 19, 6, 12, 13, 14. He was on a very, not like cold streak, but with the addition of all these guys back, especially with Wiggins back now, they just have like a 12-man rotation. So it's really hard to trust, these secondary options besides a guy like Steph. We know he's going to get his. And a guy like Draymond, like, he should see around 30 minutes. He does have that triple-double upside. Like, I don't know what else to say besides that. It's like everyone else is going to be playing kind of like 20 to 25 minutes. Kuminga, Thompson, Pods, Chris Paul, Wiggins, Moody, Payton's going to get some run, even some Trace Jackson-Davis. So it's just like, it's a headache in terms of all these other options for Golden State. In the last game of the night here, the Lakers versus the Kings. Once again, Fox feels way too cheap there at 8.6. Bonus is a strong play at 10.6, but obviously a tough matchup going against AD. Monk, always GPP viable. Same thing with Keegan Murray. They're both there. They're both fine plays. They're both priced about right. In terms of value, sure, you can get frisky and go with Harrison Barnes. He has showed some upside this year, but don't love it. And then Trey Lyles, I'll mention him, especially if Sabonis maybe gets in foul trouble. They could look to Trey Lyles there, who's pretty cheap at 3.3. On the Lakers side here, obviously LeBron and AD both questionable, but they both should be good to go. Obviously, they both look like great spend-ups if you do want to get to one of them. Russell and Reeves are there. I went with Reeves yesterday, and he was actually very strong for me. Went for 35.5 on only 8 shots. Obviously, is a little bit of a blowout there against OKC, so didn't play his full run, but I think Reeves and Russell are both strong options. They've been really stepping it up recently. In terms of the rest of the team, don't have much interest. So that is the slate breakdown. Hope you guys liked the video. Now, updated core plays will be on my Patreon link down below. A lot of injury news we do have to wait for, so obviously could be chaos tomorrow. Hit that like button. See you guys.